Every year, technology and business professionals gather to learn about the latest in innovation from Microsoft and its partners. This is the perfect place to experience what is next. Welcome to this special edition of Modern Workplace, coming to you from Microsoft Ignite 2019. Hello and welcome to this special edition of Modern Workplace. I'm your host, Alex Bradley, and I'm really excited to be coming to you from Microsoft Ignite 2019, the world's largest standalone technology conference. We've got a fantastic show with guests and thought leaders discussing their digital transformation with their learnings. A segment that I'm particularly excited for, I sat down with the events team that puts on Microsoft Ignite, learning how they make this more accessible and inclusive for all of our guests. Right now, we're going to spend some time talking about the importance of cultural transformation associated with technology transformation. Earlier, I had a chance to catch up with the Senior Director from Pfizer, Jane Wiltshire, and the Vice President of Cloud Engineering from Exelon, Jay Cavalcanto. Jane, Jay, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Today, we're going to talk about the cultural side of technology deployment. And as we've been chatting, Jay, I think you had a really interesting learning from your cloud productivity deployment in terms of how people adopted and what got the initial user adoption. Perhaps you could share that.
Yeah, it was funny. We probably got more adoption for the non-work stuff first. So we had bike riding communities, fishing communities, and they were the ones that got the attention of folks first, and then the work followed after that.
Yeah, we have dogs at Pfizer, and cats at Pfizer.
There you go.
Yeah.
And they're probably one of your more popular communities, right?
Of course, right? And actually our senior leaders started posting in them, which made them more real as humans.
But I also think for us, it was a matter of, initially we were upset about it, and then we kind of embraced it, because this is bringing your whole self to work, and that's part of your whole self is your personal interests outside of work.
The more you can build upon the way that people interact with friends and family, the more they'll be comfortable using those same tools in the workplace.
Yeah, one of the biggest things that we've started doing for that is we've started doing podcasts. To your point, right? People embrace their personal technology. Yeah. So we took the same approach and said, let's kind of capitalize on a little bit of this podcast craze that's going on. And that's what we started doing.
And do you have a sort of mix? So you mentioned podcasts. That's kind of interesting. That's, I'd say, obviously, I think people are very accustomed to those in their personal life, but maybe from a technology training and adoption, that's a new modality. I think you also do a weekly video. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that video segment is really to teach people about the various Microsoft technologies. So we have a whole Yammer community about this, and we have people suggest topics, and then we might teach them about Sway or To Do or any of these things. And then we encourage, go out, make a Sway, try a presentation in this versus this. So really encourage folks to use the tools.
Yeah, we do something really, really similar. We have a monthly innovation cafe. Is actually our business users coming and teaching something that they've learned how to do.
Yeah.
So it's really impactful when it's not my team teaching it, here's how to use the tools, but instead it's someone from their community saying, hey, I learned how to do co-authoring, and this is how I do it, and this is how it's enabled me to work more productively.
And what have been some of the most ingrained habits that have been hardest to overcome in both of your organizations, and how have you helped people change how they work and collaborate?
It's all about sharing, is teaching people to share more and to work out loud versus this ping pong of emails that go back and forth, to move it to more of a conversation.
Email's so ingrained in everything that we do, but email is this silo of power and knowledge, and it's about breaking that silo to say, don't keep all that knowledge to yourself. There's more power to getting it out there and sharing it, and that's just a hard paradigm to shift in a large corporation.
What we've encouraged people to do within teams is really adopt chat first as a means to engage with one another.
Yep.
And then what we see is once they start understanding chat, then they go, oh, okay, what are these Teams channel things about? And they'll create a team channel with their team and then start to chat there.
And you guys do an insane number of minutes of online meetings. Tell us a little bit about that.
So we do about 15 million minutes a month in currently Skype meetings right now. And we're in the process of migrating all of those to Teams. And I think that number will only go up because of how much better the mobile experience will be.
So for adoption and change management, what would be the top 1, 2, 3 things that you would advise people, like you wish you'd known when you embarked upon your respective journey?
For me, I would say embrace your community. So your community can teach themselves if you give them the tools. We're seeing people now asking for the training. So we call them collabathons, where we pull people in as a team because we want them to work together with these new tools. And so we want them to learn how to use them together. And we use metrics around how they work in order to teach them the tools in a way that will be helpful for them.
Yeah, I think what's so important is to change where you think about your control point. The nature of how much is moving to the cloud and how much is moving off-prem, I think really moves that control point to say, let's focus on the data, let's focus on ensuring that we have data encrypted, let's focus that those barriers exist. So I call it bumper bowling, right? I call it bumper bowling to say, we're going to set up these bumpers because we can't train and make sure everybody's following the rules, but we're going to set up some bumper bowling where you can go ahead and play with the big kids and not hurt yourself.
Jane, you've had some interesting experiences of how you engage with that community, not so much on the cyber side, but to get adoption and to embed the tools. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we had a really large catalytic moment at the beginning of 2019. So we had been on our journey to adoption of Microsoft O365 in 2018. So we spent about a year trying to figure out how to do it. And it was very much a grassroots effort. At the end of last year, we had a CEO change and we had a new chief digital officer come in. She brought us this challenge. The ELT was having an offsite meeting and she said, Jane, I want it to be entirely paperless. So we use Teams as a communication vehicle to present them with all of the information and use it in the rooms.
And that was a moment in time. What have you seen after the fact in terms of did that actually land with those teams and embed in their way of working on an ongoing fashion?
So our ELT has really embraced OneNote. It wasn't really where we were expecting them to embrace it, but because of the way they work with the ELT and their chief of staffs,
yes.
OneNote is a tool that they are absolutely loving. It was interesting to see some of the which tool was embraced at what level and how they're using it.
What would you leave us with in terms of the things that you plan on doing in the next 6 to 12 months?
My goal is to make our world feel smaller, right? Make the ability for folks to talk, to solve each other's problems across business units, across regions, across space.
For us, it's embracing the community, but never thinking you're done.
Coming in.
Right, and Microsoft will push us in that, right? Because there's new tools coming out all the time. Look what we just learned here at this conference. There's like 4 new things we got to go figure out how to teach people to use.
Jane, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm excited to be joined now by my co-host on Modern Workplace, Aya Tange. Aya, welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you. Now, you had a chance to listen in on that customer panel. What were your takeaways?
It was really interesting. I was actually thinking about when I go back to Redmond, when I talk to customers, everyone's really talking about the cultural change that they need to do, and then the technology comes with it.
Good, so it wasn't just me.
No, it was not just you.
Awesome. Tell me a little bit more about the day job.
My day job actually is more working with our engineers to build the product, but I bring in the customer voice while we do that, and so Ignite's a great way to find all that customer feedback and bring it back to the office.
Now, I'm guessing the day job normally doesn't involve presenting to 6,000 people.
Sadly, no.
Tell us a little bit about what you were doing in that Microsoft 365 Tech Keynote.
So I started off with, how to build a Power App, how to create flows in Power Automate, and then I got to announce a really cool capability called Office Scripts, which is a new way to enable scripting in Excel on the web.
Oh, it looked like you were having fun.
I was having a lot of fun.
Now, speaking of fun, tell us a little bit about what you're going to be getting up to on Modern Workplace here at Ignite.
Sure. So I get to talk to Jeff Tieper in a little bit to really learn about what he's been up to. And then I'm going to talk to Angela King to learn about how she's brought in diversity and inclusion and accessibility, and she runs this whole entire show.
Awesome. Thank you, Aya.
Yeah.
Great. Plenty more coming up on Modern Workplace. First, we're going to have a discussion with Jared Spataro, the Corporate Vice President of Microsoft 365, and how he thinks about customer obsession. Then, we're heading back to the Microsoft 365 booth, where a customer is telling their own story as part of the experience. And last but not least, we're going to focus on how diversity and inclusion is present here on the show floor. That's coming up. I'm joined here in the podcast center by Jared Spataro, Corporate Vice President of Microsoft 365. Jared, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here with you, Alex.
So, busy couple of days. You had your tech keynote yesterday. I wanted to start off by asking you, what's changed in the interactions and the type of conversations that you have with customers?
I think urgency has changed. People increasingly are feeling like, wow, as you think about what the new normal is, it is change. And then the other thing that has changed for them is they've just realized we're not going to be able to keep up with this amount of work. I can't keep up with the communications coming my way. And so there is this sense of a cry for help because the expectations continue to stay the same or get higher. And that has changed the urgency that people feel as they come to us and say, boy, we need to rethink what we're doing here.
Where are some examples, or what are your favorite examples of where you think we're doing a good job, or customers that have been on that journey with us and where that partnership has worked?
The single best example I feel like I'm seeing now is a focus that is on trying to grab a particular executive who's driving a cultural change and have them latch on to Teams.
And speaking of that hub for teamwork, let's spend a moment and have a look at Satya.
Microsoft Teams is been a breakout experience. It brings together for the very first time in one user experience scaffolding, chat, meetings, collaboration, as well as business process.
So he's gone through that, taking it to another level, like what that hub means. Tell us in your own words, like, why does that matter?
When we focus on the business problem, what we're finding is that there is a very consistent pattern of how people want to work together. That pattern consists of ensuring that they're able to very quickly communicate and then escalate that communication to meet their needs. Everyone is trying to get their people to bring their best ideas together and come up with the way to ultimately move forward. And people are just wondering, how do I do that? How do I do that when some of my team is in Mumbai and the other part of the team is New York? There have not been tools that have allowed them to do that in the same way. And that's where I think Teams allows them at that business problem level to say, well, here's a set of things that we're finding from a pattern perspective everybody needs. Now you sort out culturally how you're going to use them.
I get this sense that there's an element of early adopters and people who are more sort of tech-led who have rapidly moved towards Teams in this instance.
That's definitely true.
But equally, I've had the questions from customers like, what's wrong with how I'm doing it? Like, what is wrong? Like, why, does everybody need this?
I think everybody needs it to be competitive. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. Your industry clock cycle has sped up significantly. There's just no way that people are going to be able to get things done without AI. We have absolutely moved out of the individual, doing his or her job on an assembly line. We've moved into the atomic unit of production being a team and being a group of people.
Now, what do you mean by that, the atomic unit of production?
A lot of our thinking, I think, has been influenced by, look, you have a job to do it and get really good at it. That is an atomic unit of production that is the individual, the human, the person. Increasingly, what we see is that because of specialization, to do anything worthwhile today, you have to bring together a bunch of specialists. You deeply know this field, this domain. I deeply know that domain. And in order to create a car, we all have to work together. And that changes the dynamic of what work looks like. It is kind of a fundamental change. But the tools and technologies and culture have not kept up with that. So we're at this really interesting time in history right now where all of a sudden it's like, whoa, we woke up and things changed, and yet we have not changed.
One of the other things that Satya talked about yesterday was around sort of artificial intelligence and the notions of everyday AI. So let's play that clip and then I'd love your thoughts.
We want to infuse AI into every experience out there. We're infusing AI into PowerPoint. Presentations are more persuasive. Data is more actionable in Excel. Videos are more searchable in Stream, and emails are more accessible.
So tell us what we should take away from what Satya was saying there.
Whenever the human race has been faced with a big challenge, there's always been these doomsday sayers who have said, it's all over. And I think that that's the way they've talked in essence about kind of this pace of work. And we would say, oh, no, look, there are certain things that we can absolutely come in and help with, and other things humans are going to continue to do. That is, our perspective is that AI doesn't put people out of jobs, it puts people into jobs that are right for their capabilities. We're really excited about that. So we're trying to do two things. We're really trying to breathe new life into experiences and apps that people already know by bringing AI in. Satya referenced a number of those. We're also trying to create net new experiences like Teams that the world has never seen where AI does amazing things. A simple application of AI in that experience is blurring out the background, both noise and what you see behind you. That may seem like a simple thing. It makes all the difference in people actually being able to focus as they communicate. So it's a great example example of just a little bit of everyday AI that makes all the difference, even in a new tool.
And what's the difference between everyday AI and not everyday AI?
Everyday AI is saying, look, there are things you do right now where we can be very helpful with AI. You know, Satya was listing, and one of the stats I love about PowerPoints is we've had 1 billion slides kept that were suggested by an AI engine. 1 billion. That means we've proposed several billion, and 1 billion were kept.
1 billion slides designed by artificial intelligence
Designed
and
by a machine.
accepted by users.
Exactly.
And I
That's
imagine it goes
super
back
valuable.
in and trains the models on the back end.
That's exactly what happens. Again, you know, at the session, I had this opportunity yesterday to talk about the fact that at the end of the day, the most valuable asset we're creating with Microsoft 365 is the graph. You know, we refer to it as the Microsoft graph. Every time you interact with the service, you're sending signals, and we are refining that graph. And that graph becomes your asset. It maps the people and information in your organization. It allows you to reason across it in ways that you never could do before. So, tons of
Interesting.
value.
So that brings me on to the final clip I want to show you of Satya's, which I think leverages the graph. So let's have a look at this.
The next step forward for us in M365 or Microsoft 365 is knowledge. If you look at it, you're using your devices, you're using these applications, you're creating perhaps the most valuable data about your people, their relationship to other people, the expertise, the artifacts of work. All this today is raw data. We want to convert that into knowledge that accrues on a continuous basis.
Love it.
What would be the takeaways there?
I like to explain it this way. Up to this point, last 30 years or so, productivity has largely been about being more efficient in what you're already doing. Going forward, we believe productivity will be about harnessing the knowledge of your organization so you can do things you've never been able to do before. That knowledge, if you will, is recognizing that there's a part of your organization that knows something that another part should know. And when you transfer that knowledge, you actually get this amazing set of like, wow, why are we doing this?
And that existed before, but you couldn't see or tap into that.
Correct.
All right, so I've got 2 final questions.
All right.
You not only speak with customers frequently, but you are passionate about telling their stories. And I know that you did that in the keynote. So maybe share a few of the stories that you showcased yesterday.
You bet. A guy by the name of Martin Lee, who works at Auto Glass, UK-based windshield repair shop. Just love what Martin has done. Martin has discovered the Power Platform. With the Power Platform, he's able to really start to go in and do process automation. I love Martin's example because the guy started out as a dispatcher working the phones. During the time when we tell a story, we say, and then he moved into IT. You know, that's the exciting thing for us. This is not only changing companies, it's changing lives. So I love that, having that type of impact.
It reinforces that, you know, AI isn't necessarily taking jobs. It's empowering people in new jobs.
Absolutely. You know, Martin didn't know how to code. He still doesn't know how to code, yet he's making solutions that are changing the way his company operates.
What do you hope attendees here or people watching online take away, and what should they be doing as they try and achieve their own version of a modern workplace?
Number 1, get clear on what you want to accomplish and why you want to accomplish that. And then number 2, the big takeaway is I can come and say, hey, Microsoft 365 is a productivity service that puts AI to work for you in service of those objectives. Then we can have a very productive conversation, and I can say, you tell me, you know, what you're trying to do. I will show you just the depth and breadth of technology and innovation that you perhaps have not seen in a generation. Let's apply those things to your problem.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jared. I appreciate the conversation.
My pleasure. Great to be here, Alex. Thank you.
Back on the show floor, Aya has been joined by a special guest. Aya?
I am here with Jeff Teeper, Corporate Vice President of Microsoft 365 Engineering. Hi, Jeff. How are you?
Hi, good. Thank you.
So you just got off the mechanic stage.
Yes.
How was it?
It was good. It was a jam-packed demo, 20 minutes, and I can't even count how many things we showed that are new.
You had quite a crowd, I'll tell you that.
Yes, it's fun.
So you've talked about kind of the key collaboration innovations this week. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, we talked a lot about a variety of things. One was the idea of the intelligent internet, how you can create a dynamic workplace where you're bringing people together with social and video and the latest news and applications all in one place, making it super, super easy with the new SharePoint home sites. Next, we talked about Office collaboration, with OneDrive, the Word, Excel, PowerPoint, connecting with Teams, a glimpse of the future with the Fluid framework, and showed a whole bunch of stuff there. And then lastly, we talked about Project Cortex, which was announced by Satya, is the first new application in Microsoft 365 since Microsoft Teams that is harnessing AI to generate an enterprise wiki for you, all the topics and pages, and then put them in the flow of your everyday work.
So you talked a little bit about the Fluid framework. Can you tell us a little bit more and why it's so important?
Traditionally, collaboration has been locked up in silos, and what we've got in the Fluid framework is a platform that cuts across all our applications. So you could have a table of sales information that you could collaborate on across Word and Excel and PowerPoint and SharePoint and Teams and Outlook. So it's this idea of heterogeneous real-time collaboration.
And you also talked about Project Cortex, and it has so much potential. What are some things that people can take away and even do at home?
Yeah, so what we're trying to do with Project Cortex is deliver everyday AI, a set of AI technologies to help you capture, organize, and discover information right in the flow of your work. You don't have to know AI, you don't have to search for things, it's just intuitive.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for your
Great.
time, Jeff.
Thank you.
Back to you, Alex.
Thanks, Aya. Awesome to hear directly from Jeff about some of those announcements. Fluid Framework, Project Cortex. Coming up, we're going to take a tour of some of the show floor here and see how we're doing more than just talk about accessibility and inclusion. But first, let's take a sneak peek before I have a chat with a customer about one city's digital transformation journey.
Every department that the city has, we have ownership over the IT operations. We are a 40 square mile city, and so we have a lot of assets that we have to manage. How do we take all these disparate systems and move them into one? With Windows 10 and Office 365, we're able to better collaborate and become more efficient. We're able to be safe and secure. It allows me to be creative. In the government, we're able to do things that matter to people and make an impact on their lives. With the modern desktop, we can actually do something that maybe no one else has ever done before.
Welcome back to Modern Workplace Live from Microsoft Ignite 2019. We're here at the Microsoft 365 Hub at the City of Corona installation, and I'm delighted to be joined by Kyle Edgeworth, the Deputy CIO of the City of Corona. Kyle, welcome.
Thank you, Alex.
Here we are, Microsoft 365 all around us, and we've got this little outpost of the City of Corona. Tell us what we're looking at.
We're looking at a way that we can actually be data-driven. So we took a lot of our heuristics and our data that we have internally, and we started to make actually informed decisions based on it. So we made BI dashboards, and then we made other insights into our workspace, and moved a lot of our infrastructure to the cloud.
And what are some of the key parts of the story? We can see the video rolling in the background. There are a couple of dashboards. What are your favorite bits of the story?
I think us understanding, working with our fire department and actually helping them understand where their most calls are occurring, and then how they can actually better treat our citizens.
Amazing, so real impact.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually helped us improve the response times to our citizens.
That's amazing. Now, here we are, we're at Ignite. I know you were in some of the keynotes and whatnot. What are the things that you've been excited about to take back to the city and implement when you get back there next week?
Our next evolution is actually moving our desktops to the cloud. So we're actually in that process of using Windows Virtual Desktop and making it so our citizens and our employees can actually access their data in the cloud and wherever they need to. So we're actually a resilient city.
And you've got a good foundation with Microsoft 365.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Carl, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Alex.
All right, now I'm excited to go back and join Aya, who's had a chance to meet with some of the attendees here at the Hub. Aya, what have you been hearing?
I've heard kind of three main things. The first one is Microsoft Teams. We just announced some really cool capabilities, so there's a lot of buzz about it. Last year was all about, what is Microsoft Teams? Now it's all about how do we actually use it and deploy it. Second, adoption, Microsoft 365 adoption. People are really moving their workloads into the cloud. Mm-hmm. And lastly, security compliance. So how important our security compliance features are to really help people's organizations stay secure.
Teams, adoption, security and compliance.
That's it.
Awesome. Well, let's take a look at some of the conversations that Aya has had.
So what have you learned this week?
A lot of
new?
things around Teams.
Good.
New collaboration bars. That is very good.
More about Teams, Yammer, more about SharePoint, all the new items that are coming down the road.
We just learned about To-Do and the integration of tasks within Outlook and everything else. That's going to be super beneficial for us.
It has been exciting 2 days, actually a lot of sessions which I attended more on the information protection, also about the Microsoft Search, and also a lot about how to do our content management and the mining and knowledge management.
Fantastic. Thank you for capturing some of those conversations, Aya.
Of course.
Coming up next, we're going to spend some time with Bob Bejan, the Corporate Vice President from Events, Studios, and Communities here at Microsoft. He and some of his team are going to be talking about how we've tried to incorporate accessibility and inclusion at our events and what you can do to incorporate those same principles into your events. Stay tuned. Joining me now is Microsoft's Corporate Vice President of Events, Studios, and Communities, Bob Bejan. Bob, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Now, events, studios, communities, that all comes to bear in pulling off an event like this.
Totally true.
And your team has really shepherded how we think about accessibility and inclusion at events.
Yes.
A lot of people will focus on accessibility, maybe it's ADA or legislative compliance, or some people will focus on the inclusivity. How do you think about those two things being different or two sides of the same coin?
Well, they kind of are symbiotic in the sense that you kind of can't think about one without the other. But I think the distinguishing point is I think historically people think about accessibility as this kind of minimum bar requirement that you have to get to. Ramps, that kind of thing, closed captioning, these kinds of things, very simple. But accessibility is really just the beginning of it. And when you really start to think about inclusion, it's moving past the minimum requirements and really starting to go, what does it take to change the way someone feels in the experience they're having with you and your brand? You have to give full credit to our CEO, Satya Nadella, and the leadership team there that said, hey, look, inclusivity can't just be a bolt-on. It can't just be a little afterthought. It's really about saying, look, empathy is what drives this quest for a deeper understanding of everyone's experience and this posture of listening.
Now, it's interesting we've been having this conversation about accessibility and inclusion. Like the bread and butter of putting on this event is it comes down to spreadsheets and dollar and cents. Now, how do you think, sometimes when we have these conversations, people may think that this is a nice to have, that it isn't affecting that bottom line or is a cost. How do you think about that?
Well, I mean, anybody that's in the modern world kind of making an argument that it's kind of a bolt-on, nice to have, it's not essential, is I think just naive, right? And just very short-sighted, because when you think of the bodies of population that are represented across the world, you cannot ignore the buying power and the market force of these groups. So it's just naive to think that this thing is something that's just nice and not necessary.
Yeah,
it's an absolute essential.
Look around us right now, like the humans that are surrounding us.
Exactly
It's a
right.
diverse group of people.
Exactly right.
All right, so as we wrap up, if you were to provide advice to people who maybe are running their own events of any size, maybe not quite 30,000 people, what would your advice be in terms of how they can think about bringing in the principles of accessibility and inclusion, learning from our journey, and enact them in their own events?
Well, I'd say in any organization of any size, there are probably in that organization, either formal or informal, communities that are formed around many of these diverse groups of our population.
These are like the employee resource groups.
Exactly. At Microsoft, they're ERGs, other places they're called communities, that kind of thing. I'd say the first stop is engage with those communities. It's an incredibly valuable and rich resource. And then the other part of it is if you're just an individual, engage with people who are not like you and listen to what they have to say, hear the story, because that is what it's all about, right? That is the core of what kind of the sense of true inclusion is about. Understanding, empathy.
Great, and if I take one thing away, as you said earlier, accessibility is not a bolt-on.
No, accessibility is not a bolt-on, and it's the beginning, not the end.
Fantastic, thanks so much for the time, Bob.
My great pleasure.
Now, my co-host Aya has spent some time with the exec producer of Microsoft Ignite. Let's check it out.
Thanks, Alex. So we're here today with Angela King, the executive producer of Microsoft Ignite. Thanks for joining us, Angela.
Yeah, happy to be here.
How are you doing?
Excellent. Really excited to show you all the stuff that we've been working on.
Awesome. So my first question is, how do you make all of this happen?
Gosh, well, it takes a village. There's about 50 FTEs that focus on getting Ignite to be successful.
Wow.
And over 2,000 suppliers that help us make this week work.
That's a lot of people.
It is.
And how are you feeling now?
I am so proud. I am really excited to share all of the great work that we have been doing as a team. We have over 40 diversity and inclusion sessions here at Microsoft Ignite, as well as Empower lunches and all kinds of activations and activities.
That's really cool. So tell me a little bit more about these pins that I have.
Yeah, so as you can see, we have pronoun buttons this year. They've been really popular. The most popular one is actually one that you're wearing. It's the she, her, he, him, and they, them, which is our ally button.
I love that. No, that's a great one. I also see here I've got my Women in Tech button as well.
Yes, also one of my favorites. We have lots of different diverse groups represented. We have Love Wins pins. We have all kinds of different inclusive diversity pins.
So what are some of your favorite experiences here at Ignite?
Well, I have two.
Okay.
So the first is childcare. This is something I am personally passionate about with two little kids myself.
Yes.
We piloted a program at Build, and we're able to bring it here to Microsoft Ignite.
That's awesome.
Thrilled that we have dozens of families who are taking part in it, and it actually filled up the very first day we opened it.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And you said you had one other.
Yes. I'm really excited that this year we were able to provide hundreds of comp and discount passes to underserved communities with our partner nonprofit.
That's great to hear. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about accessibility. What are some things that we have in that space?
Well, we caption every single session here at Microsoft Ignite. We also provide ASL interpreters for those that request that. All of our materials are printed in Braille. We provide accessible seating, and probably the most important is we actually have an accessibility concierge. She's available pre-event, so she reaches out to anybody who's self-identified that needs accommodation on site and works with them to make sure that we have what we need here when they get here. She also works with people on site to help provide the best experience here.
So where are we at right now?
This is where our therapy animals are. So one of my favorite experiences here as well. This is where you can just take a moment to recharge, snuggle a puppy, and just take a moment because there's so much that's going on here with over 1,200 sessions. This huge hub that's the size of 2 football fields. It's just a moment that you can just take a moment for yourself.
Yes, and I know I will be here tomorrow.
Yes.
So thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
Angela. I really
Thank
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Back to you, Alex.
Thanks, Aya. As a dog owner missing my pup, I really enjoyed spending time with those therapy dogs, but more importantly, understanding the role that they play as a part of that focus on accessibility and inclusion here at Microsoft Ignite. I hope you've really enjoyed this episode. Some great insights and learnings from all of our guests throughout the episode. If you've enjoyed it, please head on over to modernworkplace.com where you can register for notifications about all future episodes. On behalf of Aya and myself, a big thank you to you for watching and to all of our guests. I'm Alex Bradley. Until next time, here's to making your business work better.